Hello, I'm Leonard Garrison. I'm professor of flute at the Lionel Hampton School of Music at the University of Idaho. And today I'd like to share my very favorite flute warm-up. It's something I start with every day, and I have done so for the past 40 to 50 years. I've taught this to thousands of flute students. And this is called Harmonics, and it addresses the most basic aspect of flute playing, which we must renew our knowledge of every day, and that is the skill of changing registers, going from the low to the middle to the high register. Now, there's been a great deal of misunderstanding about how to do this very basic skill. In fact, many years ago, my teacher, Walfred Kujala, wrote an article called Take Your Pick, Winds of Change, in which he presented all of the various ideas that he found in writing about this very skill of changing registers. And the prescriptions were all over the map. Some of them, were contrary to others. And so scientifically, Kujala presented actually what should happen to change registers. Now, let me show you the basic form of this exercise. We're going to start on a low G on the flute, play that low G, and before you actually do the exercise, it's good to center your sound on that note. Notice that I prefer not to use vibrato on this particular exercise. I use vibrato in all kinds of other situations, but for harmonics, I like to keep it simple. So here's your low G. So with the emphasis on a focused sound in the low register, I like to drop the jaw, keep the inside of the mouth as open as possible, but focus from the upper lip down onto the blowing edge. Now, to do the harmonic exercise, we slur from the low G to the middle G, and then one more step to a high D, but not fingering the D, but keeping the fingering of the G, so using the harmonic rather than the real fingering, and then coming back down. Now, how do we do that very simple exercise? How do we change registers? We don't just blow harder. However, on any wind instrument, the higher you play, the faster the air. Now, again, it's not just blowing harder, but we make the air go faster through manipulation of our embouchure, which is how we're holding our lips, and specifically the opening between the lips, which is called the aperture. And for the lower you play on the flute, the larger the aperture has to be. The higher you play on the flute, the smaller the aperture has to be, and thus you're changing air speed. So that's the first element. The first two elements, actually, because the airspeed and the size of the opening are very closely associated. Now, for the third element, which is unknown to many flutists, it was proven in an article many years ago by Richard Hahn, who was one of my predecessors teaching here at the University of Idaho. And this article was called The Flute Embouchure and the Soda Straw. Richard Hahn took a soda straw and blew through it, moved it back and forth on the lip plate, and voila, the register would change, thus proving that the distance between your lips and the blowing edge has to be reduced the higher you go on the flute. So for the low register, the lips are fairly withdrawn, and the lower lip only covers maybe about a fourth of the embouchure hole. Now, for the high register, the lips move forward on the lip plate, and the lower lip probably covers about half of the embouchure hole. So the lips have to move this way. And if you're not used to doing this, a wonderful supplementary exercise is to pretend that your finger is your flute and practice pushing the lips forward over the finger and using those muscles. So when we put everything together, the lips are going to start sort of retracted for the low register and a fairly large opening, and then going forward and making a smaller opening for the high register, and then back down. So to resume our exercise, let's play G again. Notice I do it all in one breath, about 2 counts per note. And so I take a nice healthy breath beforehand, and all slurred so that I'm sliding from note to note, so to speak. So here's G. Now, another thing to note is that I don't want to play the high notes louder than the low notes. So I start with a nice, healthy, big sound in the low register and then ease up to those high notes by using my lips more than I'm using my air. So now we move to the note A flat and we do the same procedure. Notice that I'm not really changing the angle of my airstream. If I were to do that, I would play flat in the low register and sharp in the high register, which I don't necessarily want to do. Now, another note is the harmonic, the third note, is a little flat. That's just the nature of a harmonic. Don't let it bother you. Now, we're going to go up chromatically by half steps and play an A natural thumb 1, 2 with the same exercise. Notice the lips have to be very supple and fluid to allow these changes to take place. Now, in terms of the vowel sound that I prefer for the low register, I think the perfect vowel is ah, because it forces you to kind of drop your jaw and open. For the high register, I think the perfect vowel is ooh, because it pulls you forward and it's a smaller opening. So I'm going ah, ooh, ah, as I'm playing this exercise. Now we were on A, we're going to proceed to B flat, but here we have to watch our fingering because the first fingering that most people learn is what we call 1 and 1 B flat. So it's thumb, 1 and 1, plus the pinky, of course. That will not work well for harmonics. So we want to substitute the thumb B flat for that, which we move the thumb to this little tab here, making sure that the actual B flat key is going down, and then the first finger leaving off the first finger here. So here's B flat. Then we move our thumb back to its normal position to play B natural. Then remove the thumb and we're going to play C natural. And then C sharp. By the way, C sharp is a very difficult note to play because the flute must be well balanced. Make sure you're not propping the flute up with extra fingers. You should only have the pinky down in the right hand. Then the thumb should not be too far forward, but should be more or less on the back side of the flute, pushing forward so that it holds it in place. Then holding the flute in your left hand in this lower knuckle of the index finger, and of course firmly in your chin below your lip, although not pressing too hard. So C sharp. And then D, the last note that I play in this exercise is the middle D on the flute with the first finger up. That's the second D in the staff. So making sure the tone is pure on each harmonic. And this is the healthiest way to wake up with the flute every day. Now, going beyond this, as you go on to play scales and etudes and solo material, if you're working in your high register and you find some impurity of sound, you can then come back to your harmonics to relearn the purity sound on those high notes. All you have to do is think down a perfect fifth. So for instance, if I'm playing a piece that has a high F sharp, that's a problematic note. And I'm not happy with my sound on that, well then I can reuse my harmonic warm-up and play harmonics on a B, going up and stopping on the third note. I'll show you that I'm fingering a B. After I stabilize that harmonic, I'm going to change to the real fingering for F sharp. And notice the pitch is a little bit different. That's okay. So harmonics are a panacea. They're a way to learn the difference between registers. Good luck with your practicing, and thanks for listening.